the Audio Description Network Alliance Know Your Narrator series bonus episode. Today, we're very happy to have Robert Kingett join us. He is an audio description writer, he's an author, and he's an audio description consumer. Thanks so much for joining us, Robert.
Thank you for having me.
Love to start off with my favorite question to start things off. What do you love about audio description?
Oh my God, how much time do you have, really?
It's as much as your computer and my internet can handle.
What don't I love about audio description? Audio description is a cornerstone of my life. I was introduced to the infamous Miles Neff back in the 1990s, WGBH and DVS. I watched a lot of quote unquote DVS movies, and I was hooked ever since. And now I proudly call myself an audio description snob because I care very, very, very much about the quality of audio description as well as the access to the audio description. So to sort of circle back around, I just love the whole process, the writing, the voice talent, the mixing, the engineering, the culture it allows me and so many others to participate in.
Very cool. And with the coinage of the audio description snob, when Melody said that on her podcast, it was definitely something that's like, this definitely puts you in a different position by calling yourself a snob. And I think about wine snobs and how they have the palate, the taste for audio description. What is your experience in that taste? Like, what makes you a snob about audio description?
I care very, very much about word choice in the script. So whereas the casual consumer may just enjoy the audio description, I'm kind of going a little bit more and kind of picking it apart a little bit as I'm enjoying it. So it's kind of like a critiquing what you love kind of thing. So I pay very, very close attention to how the narrator sounds and who my favorite narrators are and what kind of movies their voice is best for and what kind of verbs and adjectives are used in the scripts to convey the different actions on screen. Am I answering your question? I feel like I'm veering off.
Well, it's absolutely, because when it comes to being an audio description snob, when we talk about that, you've already mentioned some of the things that we've talked about, whether it's the writing, the voice, the mixing, the placement, the timing, and all of these things affect the audience and the audience's immersion. And what I'm wondering is that out the gate, Robert, the first thing you mentioned is word choice. Now, obviously, as a writer and an author, that's very important to you, but for you to be able to both enjoy and criticize the experience at once. It sounds like you're combining personal and professional, that you're
Right.
able to enjoy it and you're able to judge it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That helps. Like if you're going to be involved in a industry that you're really passionate about, I think you kind of have to lovingly critique to make it grow and make it better, more inclusive. That's another thing. I care very, very much about inclusion in audio description. So that means everything from having a trans narrator do the script narration for a movie that has a trans character. I care very much about having Black audio description writers writing audio description for a documentary about African American rights and things like that. I want to see the audio description industry especially hire more blind and visually impaired people. That is my number one priority.
Well, it sounds like with that priority, what I'm hearing is that those choices make a difference, that kind of inclusion makes a difference in the experience of the audience. Am I hearing that correctly?
Correct. It does two things. Not only does it strengthen your product that you're offering, it also broadens your audience pool to the point where it would kind of be nonsensical to not care about diversity if you care about broadening your business.
Very cool. Let's move on to another question, if I may. experience that you've had as a audio description writer primarily, can you name
Mhm.
an experience that you had in writing that you found challenging and you're really proud of how you overcame that challenge?
Sure, yes. So I worked on a few scripts where it came down to a choice of timing. For example, there was such a finite space where I had to make a decision, and that decision was in word choice. And even though this may be quite internal, I still am very proud of it for couple reasons. One, I was very proud that I was able to call upon my literature background to sort of work through this internal problem of choosing the exact right word that would fit in this exact right slot. Where a few words would have been okay, the word that I chose was perfect for the tone of the scene and for the particular action that was taking place on screen. And most importantly, what I'm most proud of is proving a lot of people, even blind and visually impaired audiences, that this is possible, that you can be legally blind or totally blind and you can write a audio description script and it can be just as good as a sighted writer.
And that sounds like that's addressing that inclusion that you had mentioned earlier. And one of the things I love about your story of this challenge is that you used your background experience in writing to be able to make that word choice. And in my my understanding of audio description, there's a lot of words that end up on the page,
Hmm.
and that
Yes.
kind of thoughtfulness, that kind of care and consideration that you give to the writing, I think that is something that may surprise some people. Could we talk about your own personal experience in entering audio description? Maybe some assumptions that you had of what it was like to be a writer of audio description versus what actually happened? Was it the same? Was it exactly as you expected it to be?
Sure. So growing up, I suffered from quite a bit of internalized ableism. I really loved watching audio described movies, and I haphazardly turned to my blind partner at the time, way back when I was a teenager, and I told him, I said, "Hey, I think that I could write an audio description script." And then he said, "How?" And then I'm like, "Oh, yeah, well, I don't think I can do it upon thinking about it." So that was internalized ableism. It was holding myself back from achieving a goal. And once I started to actually work in the audio description industry, I'm learning that there's no right way or wrong way to do things. There's just workflow and how you adapt your workflow to make your output as smashing as it could possibly be. I've learned that unfortunately there is still a lot of ableism in the audio description industry, but I've also learned that there are some really great people that really care about diversity and inclusion and allies and making the industry more inclusive for blind and visually impaired people like myself. So I guess the overall theme is that I used to think one way and then I learned a new perspective. So I guess you could say that I have just been learning a lot and I continue to learn and grow.
That's great. One of the
Hmm.
things that we're really proud of in our podcast is interviewing both blind and sighted experts in audio description, including yourself, obviously, and being able to understand the platform of inclusion and what that means. If it's all right with you, could I ask, because you've mentioned your own experience in internalized ableism, that
Hmm.
as the culture seems to be changing to more inclusion, as technology makes that inclusion sometimes easier. And I love how you said that about there's no right or wrong as long as you're fitting in the workflow and you're doing the workflow. There is that assumption of you have to do it this way. Not necessarily. Are there any other things that you could encourage other people who are wanting to learn about becoming whether it's a voice talent or an engineer or a quality control person or a writer or casting in any aspect of audio description, what are some other things that you found useful in your own, let's say success, yeah, let's say success, in your own success of working for audio description? What are some other things that you found really helpful besides, realizing, oh, I'm still learning and it's not necessarily right or wrong, here's how to do it?
hmm So a few other things that have really helped me is to don't be afraid to pick apart what you enjoy. Really learn how it works, really look into it. Listen to the professionals in the industry, really listen to what they're talking about. Even though the majority of the industry is cited, you should not be afraid to reach out and just say, hey, I created this mock script. Would you like to look at it for the prospects of future work and everything? One other resource that I would suggest, and this is going to be a little bit philosophical, so strap in.
Oh my gosh, I love this stuff.
But growing up, we sort of have this notion of talent and who doesn't have it and who has it without really showing people how to build upon their skills. Growing up, I was always subjected to this sort of competitiveness in terms of writers and writing and everything like that. And the best training resource that you could probably have is not from your own skills and abilities, but learning from other people and not viewing them as, oh, well, they have a lot of talent and I don't. You both have different strengths and weaknesses that you could utilize and bring together to build upon either your resume or their resume or both of y'all's resumes. So utilize whatever resources, even if you're doing it wrong compared to the industry standard, you're still learning the craft and you're still practicing. So just utilize resources without worrying about how much talent you have or don't have.
It's so funny how people can make that assumption that talent is just born. But what I'm hearing from you is that in your own experience, that practicing the craft develops the skills that leads to the talent, and that it can be distracting if there's that comparison of, oh, they have and I don't. I loved how you said that about the different strengths and weaknesses, and being able to focus on where, as an individual, someone wants to grow, particularly when it comes to audio description, that there's a lot of great examples out there, and to not be afraid to reach out. You've been exemplary with that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I really hope that companies, producers, and things will notice that there is a swath of exceptional talent out here that they are just not utilizing. There's tons of people with skills and abilities that they don't have. And so I cannot wait to see the day where I'm working with a totally blind team, not just in like a see what we can do kind of thing, but like it's an everyday work day. So, yes.
That's great. And that kind of segues into the next question, which is, where would you love to see audio description go? I think you've answered that really clearly about wanting to work on a blind team regularly, that this isn't just a one-off for you. This isn't just a blip. We met, I don't even know how many years ago, and our correspondences, you've been very consistent in your approach of wanting to make sure that not only you get access as a consumer, as you call yourself, an audience member, but also as a writer and using
Yeah.
your built talents. What other things do you see ideally in your dream world for audio description?
In my dream world, and this may seem a bit odd at first, but I'm sure when you really think about it, I think it just creates a more wholesome world. So I want to get to a point where sighted people can effortlessly turn on audio description when they need it. Sort of like how closed captioning is not really considered access need. However, you have tons of sighted people that just use it when they want to watch TV or something on mute or something like that. So I want audio description to get to that sort of casual level where sighted people just use it.
Just a part of the routine, right?
Yeah, because naturally, as audio description grows, of course, blind and visually impaired people are going to be using it. But I think that if we get to a point where it's so effortless and so ubiquitous that sighted people use it without a second's hesitation, then I think we will have reached close to a audio description utopia. And that's where I want to be.
Audio Description Utopia by Robert Kingett.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Very cool.
Yes. I thought about this for years. And so as a professional and a consumer. So
Yeah, you get to play both roles.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience, Robert?
I just care very, 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 very much about this industry. I truly do. And a lot of people in my own community have criticized me for speaking out and for being really passionate that we should just accept whatever we're given and just kind of leave it at that. And to that, I ask you, why? Like, why should we? If the quality of audio description improves, your experience is going to improve. If the industry hires more blind and visually impaired professionals like myself, then maybe that 70% unemployment rate will drop to 50%. So, to that, I say you should never settle for less. You should not be afraid to be an audio description snob, and you should ask for more, because that's the only way that you're going to get it.
Very cool. And Melody would be so proud to hear you say the audio description snob again. That's so cool. One of the things that I'm really hearing from you, and this is something that we've talked about also, is the idea that audio description inclusion of making sure that blind professional talents are included in this work. It does feel like audio description can be used as a model for other industries to follow. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. No hesitation. Yes.
Let's find out how we can follow you. Can you give your social media, adcomrades.com, your own website? What would you like to share with our audience? How to follow you or stay in touch with you?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a part of a cooperative known as Social Audio Description, and you can follow them, or I should say, at adcomrade.wordpress.com, or you can keep up with me and my happenings at my website, which is blindjournalist.wordpress.com. And if you go there, you can see all of my social media links and everything there. So, yay.
Yay, indeed. Thanks so much, Robert. This has been great.
Oh, thank you for having me.